Hello everyone, my name is Garrett Mercer and I'm coming to you with a new edition of Manic Monday on September 5th, 2022. As I'm filming this on Sunday night, Nick Kyrgios just took the first set 7-6, 13-11 in the breaker from Daniil Medvedev, and because it's Sunday, that means the first week of the US Open is wrapping up. And there were so many storylines to follow, from Tsitsipas getting upset in the first round to Serena Williams' final run at the US Open coming to an end in singles and in doubles. And then of course Coco Gauff is cruising into the fourth round. And how would you feel if you lost 18 times in a row to one opponent? Well, one ATP professional can actually answer that question. We've also got APP Tour results coming in from Chicago and the pickleball side of things. And then before we begin all that, all right, I want to bring it down a second, stay present, and we're going to jump into the mental side of your game with this week's edition of All in Your Head. So they say that patience is a virtue. And I feel like that applies not just to life, but tennis and pickleball as well. You know, all too often I see some of my students and they'll lose a point or two and then they'll just start to rush. It's as if they want to get that memory of the last point or points out of their head so quickly that they're not actually processing what happened, let alone planning for the next point. I want you to focus on one player, Zane Navratil. He's one of the best pickleball players in the world, especially in singles. And what I love about his game is that he never looks out of control of the tempo of a match. He does this and maintains it with one single ritual. He will go to the back fence after almost every point and then touch his paddle to that fence before stepping up to the line, whether it's to return or to serve. What that small walk does is give you a chance to just reset, gently break your opponent's rhythm in a legal way, and then process how you're going to play the next point. I think it's a great tactic. I actually tell my elite level juniors all the time to use this if they seem like they're rushing during a practice match. I think it's something that's really valuable and you can add it to your game immediately, no questions asked. I hope this helps, and that's all we got for All in Your Head. So this week on Breakpoint, we're actually going to be examining a new rivalry in sport. And no, it is not between two teams, it's between two sports, tennis and pickleball. Montagues, Capulets. And I feel like I'm Mercutio in the middle of each of them saying, "A plague on both your houses." I think that they can coexist peacefully, if not learn from each other. So today we're actually going to be seeing and going over some of the problems that I have with both of them right now, what I think they can learn from each other, and where I see them going together in the future. We're going to examine them both separately and then bring them back together at the end. So first up is tennis. And a lot of athletes from a lot of other sports actually mock tennis players, saying that it's not that difficult until they try it for the first time and realize that it pairs high technical ability with raw athletic ability if you're going to play at the highest levels of the game. It's also billed as a lifetime sport, which means that you can learn it when you're younger and then continue to play it well into your 70s and 80s. I have a student who's 88 years old and absolutely loves it. I was introduced to the sport when I was younger. I still play, I love teaching, and I love watching it at every single level. However, I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are a few problems associated with tennis currently. So we're going to run through those, kind of my thoughts on where the game stands currently. Number one, the game of tennis is prohibitively expensive to certain people who don't have the financial resources to bankroll it. Just off the jump, $250 for a racket. That's without string. String will run you probably, for a low level, $40. That includes labor. Then you've got private lessons, which can cost anywhere from $80 an hour to, in more rural areas, to about $500 an hour for lessons with master pros in metropolitan centers. Then, yeah, sure, you can play outside if the weather permits it. And hopefully you don't have to wait in that long of a line for public courts. But if you want to play indoors, court time is going to run you around $60 an hour. Then you've got tons more fees. USTA fees, just joining the United States Tennis Association. Then you've got league fees, tournament fees. If you want to play at higher levels, then you have to take clinics and camps and more private lessons. Even send your kids away to a high-level academy if they want to learn to play at the highest levels of the game. And some parents will actually spend $300,000 a year on their kids to learn how to play the game at such an elite level. And that is all with the dream that their, kids will play at a D1 or professional level. And let me break down those finances for a second. Even if you make it to the pro game, the top 50 to 100 players in the world on average make $500,000 a year. Those between the rankings of 500 to 1,000 are only making $7,000 on average per year. And those numbers do not include expenses. Problem number 2. A lot of tennis purists will always go on and on about the beautiful tradition of the game. And look, traditions are great. I get that. Except for tennis actually has some traditions that aren't so great, including the all whites policy. That is speaking to clothing. So a lot of tennis clubs actually require members to wear all white clothing. Wimbledon is a great example of this. The thing is, that tradition is actually rooted in racism, sexism, and classism. So to that I say, maybe we should actually let some of those traditions die off and instead put in place traditions that promote inclusion and acceptance of all people from all different backgrounds. So the third thing that I'm going to bring up is actually an offshoot from the previous two, and that is perceived elitism. And there are a lot of people, look, I've worked all over the country, and what I have seen is that specifically in country clubs, there is a certain group of people who like to make themselves feel better by putting other people down, making them feel inferior to them. It's just like we saw in middle school and high school. These people have not grown up and they use their perceived class in order to make people feel bad about themselves. And it's actually what a lot of people from other sports say keeps them from playing tennis, is that kind of elitism. And I'm sure some of you will say, well, it's just a few people, what's the big deal? Well, the problem is when I see people engaging in that behavior, I don't see a whole lot of people stopping them. So if you're part of the game, I think one of the greatest things that you can do is if you see that behavior, stop it. Check those people and develop a community that is inclusive and accepting of everyone. That's how we're going to move forward with this game. And it's one of the best things that could happen to tennis now and in the future. So now on to pickleball. Pickleball is a wonderful sport. It's fast, it's fun, it can be played and enjoyed by people of all ages. And one of the things that I think is so lovely about it is that because it's a younger sport, whenever you play with people, they're so enthusiastic about the game. They want to tell you, tips and tricks and give you some advice. And they just want to grow the game as fast as possible, which I think is wonderful and lends itself to such a great community. However, there are a few things that I've noticed in my year of teaching and playing that I could kind of do without. And the first one is actually, I'm going to call it little sibling syndrome. So as the youngest of three myself, I actually see this in myself sometimes, and I've seen it in pickleballers as well. Pretty much because it's a younger sport and a lot of people always attack it outside of pickleball, pickleballers will be the first person to defend pickleball to the death. They have this huge chip on their shoulder, which is a great thing, and I love how it makes them more competitive. But what it can do is that you might be hanging out on the court sometimes, and some of the people will talk your ear off about, one, how it's way better than tennis, and two, they don't want to hear any kind of constructive criticism about the game in general. I think if it was just dialed back a little bit and focused on growing the game and not comparing it to other sports, it would be far better for the game in general. Number 2, entitlement. So maybe this is just anecdotal. Maybe it's just my experience at a certain club with certain people or, the geographical region in which I teach. But I've seen a lot of entitlement from some pickleball players. When I've been giving private lessons in tennis and pickleball, 5 minutes before their court time, they're walking through my court to try to set up their nets. And I got to tell you, not only is it disruptive, it's making my clients lose focus. They're not enjoying their last 5 minutes. And also, they're paying a lot of money in order to learn from me. And those people are infringing on that. And the other thing I'll say is I've also seen people, specifically at the higher levels of the game, who during open play will openly not want to play with people of a lower level, and they'll monopolize court time because they feel as though they have the right to do that. I've heard several people complain to me about that, specifically during open play, and here's what I'm going to say. Number one, you can learn no matter who you are playing with. There's something that you can work on, and you ask any high-level professional, they will tell you the same exact thing. And number two, it boils down to respect. Treat people the way you want to be treated. You know, if you were learning the game and you were excluded because someone thought that they were better than you, that's actually verging on that elitism that I was talking about with tennis. And I think that just needs to be rooted out of the game in general. For pickleball to grow, those kinds of character defects, that's not what we want bringing into our lovely community of people. Can tennis and pickleball coexist? I think the answer is yes. But they're going to have to learn some things from the other if they're going to grow separately and together. Here are a few things that I've kind of put together that I think are very important to grow both games. Number one, tennis players. If you have not played pickleball, don't knock it until you try it. It's fun, it's fast, it's engaging, and everyone from every different age range can play it. Unless you have played, you can't say peep. Number two, pickleball has such a strong and generous community. I think tennis can take a lot from that. In a sport that is largely individualistic, you should look to pickleball. They mostly play doubles, so they're meeting a lot of different people. They start playing regularly and then they go out afterwards. It's a lovely time. I think tennis could learn a lot from that. Pickleballers, number three. You can advocate for more courts, but be respectful of tennis a little bit. Yeah, I'm not saying that you have to be all chummy, but think about it this way. Every single tennis player that you see could be a potential pickleballer. The skills translate immensely. Strike up a conversation while you're waiting for courts. Go to those local courts and talk to tennis players about pickleball. I think the crossover of those two, if it comes from a very genuine, collaborative place, can be really awesome. Tennis. Take note of how pickleball is growing. They are growing so fast. They're experimenting with scores in different leagues and pro events. They have, men's mixed and women's doubles as well as singles all coming together in the same events. I think that's something from pro down to amateur level we can take and help grow the sport that we love. This kind of stuck, in a plateau right now in terms of growth. The fifth and final thing I'm going to say is this. Both sports need to accept the fact that in the eyes of the larger sporting community, globally, pickleball and tennis are very closely related. Maybe not siblings, but more like cousins, which means that they are going to be advocating for a lot of the same resources and respect on a global scale. So we can't let these divisions literally divide us along fence lines. We need to actually accept that we can grow together on the same path, advocating for sports that we love. And that is today's Breakpoint. So for this week's Aces and Faults, we've got one for each. I'll start with the fault, and that belongs to Richard Gasquet, who lost his 18th consecutive match to Rafael Nadal. That brings his total record against the Spaniard to 0-18 at the professional level. We wish Richard well on his next tournament, and hopefully sometime soon he can actually break that streak, though I am not hopeful on that one. The ace of this week belongs to Coco Gauff, who displayed her latest signature shoe with New Balance, the NBCG1. That makes her the only female on tour to have her own signature shoe. The colorway is amazing, it's exciting, and it shows that New Balance is really invested in young athletes that are going to push style and function forward for years to come. And now on to the APP tournament in Chicago, Illinois. We've got some tournament results for you. So in men's pro singles, we had Federico Staksrud continue his impressive play. In women's pro singles, we had Salome Device get a great victory as well. And then in women's pro doubles, Lauren Stratman winning 2 weeks in a row with partner Andrea Koop. In men's pro doubles, Dylan Frazier and Andre Daescu stunned their opponents to capture gold. And then Dylan Frazier partnered with Anna Bright to win his second gold of the day. Congratulations to all. Thank you everyone for watching this episode of Manic Monday on September 5th, 2022. If you liked what you saw, if you learned something, or you just had fun, please like, subscribe, share this on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. I am at Bespoke Backhand, and I will see you next Monday.